No, it's not. Whatever those things are, if we prove them to be, they will be those things, and we will give them a label.
Right.
It won't be God.
Call energy energy, don't call God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was I think my mom makes that argument right now in her spiritual sense, is that
Right.
God is the energy in the universe. No, he's not. The energy in the universe is the energy in the universe. It has nothing to do with God. And you know, if the energy in the universe somehow has a thought process, then maybe you can call it God. But nothing we do shows that. Nothing that we've seen proves that.
Right.
So, you know, so I don't know. I mean, I think other things to note about me, I guess, are just the fact that, you know, I'm an engineer, and you know, so when people say that I went to school and I was brainwashed to think there is no God, trust me, none of my engineering classes had anything to do with, by the way, no God, you know.
Yeah.
But it was like you said, you know, a lot of colleges, a college degree now is not about learn XYZ, memorize this table. It's just a 4-year bludgeoning of your thought process and converting your thought process to just think critically about everything. Right. Which is why I immediately graduated. And you, right before I graduated, had shown me a few atheist clips from the Atheist Experience. And even then, I was still agnostic, and I watched them even kind of laughing to myself about, oh, these guys are funny, and this is interesting, and like, how do you become atheist? You know, like, I just didn't, none of that was connecting in my head yet. And then, for some reason, after college was over, and my brain had a chance to take a deep breath, all of a sudden I watched another Atheist Experience clip. You had showed it to me, and I can't even remember the argument right off the top of my head that they made, but there was just something they said in there that once it was said, I immediately realized how dumb I had been since I was 12 to be defining this nebulous, you know, thing that sparked the Big Bang as God, and suddenly I was like, I have no reason to call it God.
Right.
And then once I realized that I had no reason to call that God, I realized that I had nothing else that led me to belief in a God.
Right.
And it was like that. I didn't have this long deconversion process. It was that one thing, and within an hour of watching it, I was like, well, there it is. I know I'm atheist now. I understand the definitions now, and I understand where I truly fall. And you know, so yeah, I didn't have the long dredging, you know, kind of fear of hell or, you know.
Well, it's fun. You missed out, so.
Well, you know, it's great that I missed out, but I mean, sometimes I find it interesting because of how much I associated with, you know, LDS people growing up. You know, I mean, I watched a friend of mine that was, he basically described himself as agnostic as well. And we had a group of friends, and we would play computer games together, and we would get blitzed and just have a really great time. And then my other friend that was on a Mormon mission, and we actually kept in touch while he was on his mission, and I would send him letters, and we would actually, you know, keep in pretty good contact. And I went to his coming back, you know, speech thing, which was like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because I do not do well in churches. And I dressed nice, and I went and watched him give his speech about all this like God stuff, and I'm trying to not laugh.
Right. And you were still agnostic.
I was still agnostic,
point, right?
But I mean, I've been you know, battling long against the religion, because against all religions, because like I said, it divides people, and I don't see why there's any reason for us to be divided.
Right.
And you know, but when he came back, I watched my other friend that was just, you know, has been, you know, like drinking and trying to get laid and doing all that with us, and he was very, you know, agnostic, and he didn't go on his mission, and, you know, upset his family greatly and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, when my other friend came back, this friend ended up starting hanging out with him a lot. And just a few months later, you know, he's going back into the church, and he was doing all the chores, and he got his temple recommend by doing all like the hard work and stuff that you do after, instead of going on a mission.
Right.
And he got all of that, and it was just so weird to watch him change. And I tried to understand what was driving him to do that.
What do you think it was that made him go from drinking and trying to get laid, and basically all the things that a early 20-something-year-old guy basically does?
Yeah.
You know, because sorry, you know, we're 20-year-old guys, and that's where your thought process is. What is it you think that motivated him to turn everything around and say, okay, well now I want to put myself in that place? Do you think it was social pressure or something else?
You know, actually, yeah, to be completely honest, and I hope he doesn't, if he knows who I'm talking about, I hope he doesn't hate me forever, but...
We've mentioned no names, we're okay.
Yeah, but, you know, I have very few friends, they should know who I'm talking about. To me, in my honest opinion, he basically went back because he didn't see any other way of getting married. I think he saw the writing on the wall as far as being in Utah, living in Zion, and addressing the fact that finding a non-believer is hard.
Yeah.
And I learned that lesson, and maybe I'll go into that in just a second. But he really just seemed like he wasn't, you know, as far as the drinking and getting laid part, we were not doing the getting laid very well. And I think that he wanted to get married, and he didn't see any other way to get like a nice girl,
right,
without that nice girl being Mormon.
Right.
And he did tell me that, you know, I asked him, like, why are you going this direction? Like, what's made you a believer all of a sudden? Which
right.
we used to sit there and kind of laugh about, all this is nonsense.
Right.
And all of a sudden he's like, no, it's totally the truth. And the thing that he pointed to, which made me kind of sad later, is the Shroud of Turin. Is what he said was like his big turning point.
Sure.
That there was no evidence for how it was made or what it was, and so, you know, he believed that it was the Shroud of Christ, and that apparently opened the floodgates for him to start going back into the Book of Mormon and finding himself. And now, you know, he's very happy, and I shouldn't, you know, I guess I shouldn't knock it. He's married and happy. I think maybe has kids on the way.
Yeah.
And, you know, but I didn't even know what the Stroud Term was at the time that he told me this. And later when I learned about it, I was just a little disheartened that was what it took to suddenly buy every word of the text of Joseph Smith.
It's a bit of a laughable piece of evidence, really. So.
Yeah, and then have that be the linchpin in your conversion is a little like depressing, and that's what, you know. But that's why I think, you know, he had all these other things kind of working against him. His family was Mormon. All of our other friends were Mormon. A lot of them were kind of going more, you know, into the conserved behavioral patterns of your late 20s.
Right.
You know, and so I think he went that direction, and that's fine. But yeah, it did feel basically like the big drive was, I want to get married. I want to get laid by a nice girl.
Right.
And this is the only way to do that in Utah. I mean, and to add to that, that was one of my, you know, huge struggles. Like, especially as I became atheist, I was actually dating a very Jack Mormon girl at the time. She didn't go to church. We were having premarital sex. She smoked, you know, and then
coffee,
and all that stuff.
Alcohol,
she had a kid out of wedlock and everything else. And then she was sitting there telling me that she wants to raise her kid in the Mormon church, and any children we may have in the Mormon church. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, absolutely not. You know, and especially when I became atheist while we were doing that, that was the end of the relationship.
Yeah.
Because it just became so clear to me after that. And I had also just dated another Mormon girl right before that, where we had like the same kind of breakthrough. We date for a couple months and everything's kind of okay, blah, blah, blah. Then I meet her super Mormon family, and I'm just this total outcast, and they want me to go to church events and everything like that. I don't want anything to do with any of that. But I went to a couple of them. I went to a baptism for, you know, one of them, and marriage for the other, and all very in the church and very Mormon-y, and that shit makes me so uncomfortable. So, you know, but that was the breaking point for me, and so I see his issues with it, because then I specifically hunted down atheist women after that. I was absolutely no longer willing to date anyone with even any kind of remnants of faith, because both those girls didn't go to church. They both smoked. They both, you know, had premarital sex, and then they sit there and talk about that the Mormon church is true, but they're not living up to any of it, and then they're like, oh, it's completely true.
Well, and that's always been something that's confused me with religious people, especially like this exact thing that you're talking about. I have a couple friends who are Jack Mormon as well, who, you know, they tell you how it's true, and you have to think from the standpoint of, so this is determining your eternity. So this is really the most important question you could ask in your life, but it's not important enough to him that he loves his coffee. And the particular gentleman I'm thinking of, he's a smoker. but especially he loves his coffee. So this thing is true, and it matters if he drinks coffee or not, and it determines his eternity. But he's not. It's still not, despite all those things, important enough to him to not drink the coffee. And I can't, just as a person, I can't wrap my head around that. It doesn't even matter what the religion is. If it's Islam and you don't drink, or it's Catholicism and you don't have friends with Protestant people, whatever it is, whatever thing that you're not living up to, it's like the creator of the universe says you must do X, and you're not doing X. What business do you have in this religion? Either it's not true, or you have got some cojones flubbing this in the face of the creator of everything.
Well, and everyone does that. They have that self-justification on how they modify the religion to themselves. But the point is the religion is supposed to be the exact word of God.
Right.
Like all of the religions, basically.
Sure.
So like, how do you get to, like you said, how do you have the balls to make these exceptions for yourself just because you feel it's right? Well, the reason you feel it's right is because morality is subjective, and it's subjective based on your experiences and your beliefs, and everyone adjusts them for every little thing.
Yeah. And
they don't want to self-identify that they're going outside the grain. I mean, eventually I ran into the friend I was telling you about that had the masturbation issue when he was young. He's no longer religious, and he's no longer part of the church, and it was just funny to me because I saw him years and years later. And the first thing he said was like, well, at least I can masturbate freely now. Like, he just no longer
without the guilt, right?
Yeah, he no longer gave a shit. He just recognized, look, I'm an animal. I have base needs, and that's just the way it is.
Right.
I mean, it's like, I would love to poll how many Mormons watching this show, if they would be honest about it, are, masturbate on a regular basis. Because, the fact that I asked 10 out of 10 and they all say that they don't, I'm going to call bullshit, because I guarantee at least 8 or 9 of those 10 is lying. Has to be lying.
I heard a very interesting poll once that said when polled, I think it was 75% of men masturbate and 25% of men are liars.
Yeah.
Now, that's obviously not a real poll, but I would believe those numbers, more or less. I'm sure there is some segment of the population that does not, but, that again kind of is one of those things about religion that it seems like you have to take something that is instinctually human and make it wrong. Because you have to make it so that everybody falls into this group of requiring the spiritual service that you're offering. And every religion just about has some kind of problem with sex, or sex in a specific way, or with this person, or by yourself, or there's some aspect of it that they harp on.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting how it works. I'd like to add just as the tail end to my dating experiences, and when I finally decided to, seek wholeheartedly only atheists, I was fortunate enough to find, perfect atheist woman, and now I'm married, and, we're looking to have kids, and all those things have come together in my life. Like, once I knew what I was really looking for, I was truly able to find, like, my soulmate, as far as, like, how you would describe it. And I just feel so blessed to realize that I could find somebody
blessed.
Yeah, it's true. No, that's kind of part of my point of telling that, is because of the fact that it's like, I'm an atheist heathen. The gods should be striking me down.
Right.